Yes, and
All right, we're live.
We're live. We're live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Facebook.
Awesome.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Great.
Doing good.
What
Eric, Ben, Javi, thank everybody for being here with us today. And Javi, let's go with introductions. Why don't you start?
Yeah. Well, like for the friends that are following, we just wanna let everybody know that we, as a company, BureauWorks was awarded the Process Innovation Challenge about 2 weeks ago in LocWorld, which has been for us as a software developer, as a small player, a huge achievement in the history of the company, right? So for those who know the Process Innovation Challenge, for those who don't know, sorry, the Process Innovation Challenge is a quote unquote competition that takes place every time during LocWorld, the biggest conference in our industry, in which technology companies, buyers, translators, everyone who is proud of doing things in a different way, does showcases them, right? So around 25 people, if I'm not mistaken, right, Ben and Eric, presented several projects and several ways of doing things. Like around 5 or 6 are selected, right, to be the sort of like the to be selected as the most innovative people in the industry, as a finalist. Yeah. And then one wins, of course, and fortunately this time was BureauWorks, right? Thanks to the generative AI engine that we created, no? So you two were the judges, called the Dragons, which I love. I love the Game of Thrones terminology used, and and Gabriel was super happy to be there and present. And we had it's a pretty challenging environment, so to say, because you have 3 minutes to tell the whole audience and to convince you guys that we're innovative, that we have something that is super cool, etc. And there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of wanting to impress. So after, thanks to you being awarded with this prize, thanks to you and to the voters being awarded to this prize, we decided to do this 30 minutes call today because to explain those who connect here today, those who follow us, those who follow the doings of our company, what happened there, why we won, and what we are doing, right?
Yeah, I think it was a really fun pick this year. So this is something that goes on at every LocWorld, and it's a really neat way to share broadly some of the new things that are going on in the industry. So I was impressed with what Gabe had to share with us this year.
And before we go into that, can both you and Eric, Ben, give us a little bit of background on who you are and what you've done and what you're working on? I think it's nice for people to know.
Sure. Ben, do you want to go first?
Sure. So hi, I'm Ben Cornelius, for everybody who doesn't know me, which is probably most people watching. I've been in the language industry. Sometimes we called it globalization, localization, what have you, for 36 years now. So I've had pretty much every role in the industry. I've been the language person, the project manager, the engineer, the publisher, managing a large group, managing a small group, and dealing with billions of words out to billions of users on a regular basis. So it's fun. I love it. And we get to do a lot of fun things in this industry. And one of them has become quite popular this past year, which is dealing with large language models and AI, which is kind of the current evolution of the technology that we've been using since the mid-90s. So I use it all the time. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad to see you guys are making some fun new strides with it too.
Thank you so much.
So I'm a relative newcomer to localization compared to Ben. I've only been working in this industry for 25 years, starting in the late 90s. And but I also have done just about everything there is to do, other than be a translator specifically. But I got in mostly on the technology side, and so I was originally focused on solving problems like parsing files with regular expressions. We were dealing with code page challenges, and there's lots of struggle that we have with international processing international targeted files, given the broad breadth of different technologies that our industry touches. So I have what I'm trying to say is that technology is very close to my heart, and I can see the consequences of not having good technology. It's integral to this industry. Mm-hmm. Language is very integral, of course, and then there's the business of it as well. And the intersection of these three together is what makes me really love this industry as a whole. And I mentioned this during LocWorld as well, but it's been a long time since Trados was invented. I mean, that was in the 90s, I think, that it was exposed to me. We were starting off with pre-Trados type of environment originally. Like I said, we were in some cases mailing manuscripts for people to mark up and do edits via overnight shipments. We've come a long way, right? And so, but I think it's been a long time since something as new and interesting, something game-changing has come along, and generative AI is definitely a new. I mean, it's not a new technology, but its application suddenly is everywhere, and I think we're really I was really excited to see how many of the folks who submitted proposals for the pick this year, and we're trying to find some creative ways of using this new technology. I think Thomas Davenport is a kind of a researcher and speaker and writer in business analytics space, and he has looked at AI extensively, amongst many others, sort of analyzing where it fits within the business stack. Like, we're running a business, how do we use this technology? And I think what most companies have started to realize is that it starts off being this gigantic idea, the smart robot is sentient and walking around solving problems and baking cookies and things like that. But and I don't know why I've thought of baking cookies. Maybe I'm overdue for lunch. But the idea is the idea is that really it doesn't have to be mind-blowing. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering to add value to things using this. And you can pick a narrow space, and you can get really good at that narrow space. And I think that's one of the things that BureauWorks did really well on this particular exercise, was picking something a simple concept, and then applying it very well, and then measuring to see its value in the journey. But we'll get more into some of the ideas with BureauWorks' accomplishment here. I also want to take a step back to talk about the pick, because the Process Innovation Challenge is it is one of the few sort of head-to-head competitions in the industry, but it really is challenging in three different specific ways. One is an innovation has to add some value. Like, that's kind of what we think about when we're thinking about innovation. But Javi, as you mentioned earlier, you're also trying to get an idea across in just a few minutes. Like, you only have a few short minutes to get your idea across. And it strikes me that some of the best ideas out there, when you really boil them down, they are better when you can explain them quickly. If it is something that takes a long time, takes an hour to explain why something is going to be useful, then chances are you haven't really refined that idea. Like, it hasn't gotten distilled down to its crux, the key essence of what makes it a really great idea. So I think that's the Process Innovation Challenge's attempts to help everybody who competes to get better at that. So we try to provide a lot of feedback during this journey. And for those of you in the audience, these guys didn't just show up on stage that day. There's presentations that they had to do a long time before the event, where they're up against a lot of other candidates. And then there was some period of time where there's some coaching and additional work on trying to get their proposal as tight as it possibly can be. Yeah. And then there's the presentation itself, and it's a long journey of many hours. Not to mention in the back, sort of working on the itself, but also in terms of building and clarifying the vision of what you're going to try to pitch during the presentation. So you asked me to introduce myself, and I
It's fine. No worries. Gabriel, I want to ask you now. you well, I mean, Eric, I know Gabriel for almost 7 years. This is the second coming home for me after a period of 3 years without being at BureauWorks. And I know Gabriel can talk, and Gabriel can pitch in 3 minutes. He does that very good, right? But so I'm going to ask Gabriel, because probably most of the people that are here were not at LocWorld or didn't or couldn't attend LocWorld. So Gabriel, in 2 minutes, pitch us BureauWorks and what you told these guys to convince them. Quickly, do that. Come on.
No, I'm not, I don't think I'm going to pitch anybody
pitch
right
it.
now.
Just tell us
but,
what you're doing.
But I do have some thoughts. I think, first of all, I'm very appreciative of both Eric and Ben. It's a pity Alessandra couldn't be here with us today. I really want to be able to do it again with her. But I want to thank both of you for all the insights and conversations. And I think I had a few very interesting talks with Ben before the pick. Then I had a very interesting conversation with Eric when we were in Taos, Utah. And I think Eric is talking about something that I think super important, as far as like, for a long time, I think I was resisting the idea of the 3 minutes as something positive. I was frustrated by it. It's like, man, I've been working on this for so long. There's so much that I'd like to say. But I agree with you. I think that the forcing someone to reduce that to such a short little period of time gives you actually a lot of clarity as far as what you're doing and why it's important. So just want to say I became a believer after going through the process, as nerve-wracking as it is. And then the other thing that you're talking about is, I think we began touching on it, but for me, it's at the crux of kind of what's going on, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But I've been, right after LocWorld, I spent, I think, the weekend plus another week, like just looking deeper into machine learning and understanding a little bit more of I'm always trying to refresh what I know and what I don't know about vectorization and sequencing, the more technical stuff. And I became very, for a week or so, I was a little bit apocalyptic as far as where our industry is going. But I think there are two things that I want to ask you. One is, for me, the concept is, for me, AI isn't something in and of itself. It's what we make of it. And with that comes a very big, we're not just building tools, we're shaping behavior, we're shaping livelihoods. There's a big ethical responsibility in what we're doing. I think that's one thing that I want to discuss. And then the other thing is, and maybe we can talk about these separately, but the other thing that I think is super interesting is that I noticed that a lot of people, when they talk about AI, maybe because of the name artificial intelligence, they're thinking of it as an entity, and as an entity, it should be like it should be accountable for things like truth. When I look at AI, I don't see it at all like that. I just see it as a mechanism. I'm not worried about whether it's truthful or not. I'm worried about what can it do for us that's positive. So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on either of these things. It doesn't have to be in the right order, but I think those are two things that really strike me as we move forward. And I know that both of you are thinkers and think deeply about these things.
Ben, can you tell us your?
Yeah. I think one of the refrains I heard a lot at LocWorld this year is, there's a comet coming, and it's an extinction level event. I went, this is simply not true, right? There's no way that that's what's going on. And if there's a comet coming, there's always a comet coming. And we've seen these things before, right? The translation degree is going to take translators' jobs. It's going to keep their kids hungry, put them out of work. And that didn't happen. Machine translation is going to kill translators' jobs. That didn't happen. AI is going to kill translators' jobs. There's no reason to believe that this will happen, right? It's a tool. It's here, and we're already using it. It's not coming. It's not a comet in the sky. It's here next to us. Are we using it to do something great or not? That's the real choice. And I think for a lot of people in our industry, we need to stop looking at the sky. We need to look at what's here, and we need to figure out how to use it in a way that helps us. And that's one of the things that I saw from you guys at the pick. was, here's a way that this technology can be useful, like actually useful to the people who need something to help them out. And it resolved a lot of the work that translators aren't getting paid for, but clients get mad at them about, like tag handling, right? I need the right tags in the string, like Eric was talking about. We need it to be structured correctly to go back into the product, into our website, what have you. And then we ask them, can you do this for 8 cents a word or 25 cents a word? But there's no money then for, did I deal with my tags? And that's a mistake. And so when I looked at that and said, well, here's a way that just solves that. Translators aren't getting paid for that. It's important to the client, but not so important they're willing to pay for it. And the technology just solves that problem. It was totally righteous, right? That's exactly what we should be seeing out of these new ways that we can use GPT and Claude and all of the other tools to make our lives better, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd love to see more, right? I think that the pick is a good chance for not just you guys, but for everybody else making language technology. We're trying to figure out, what am I going to use AI for to see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Ben. And I'll just take a slightly different tact. The context and the relationship between a segment or a particular task intervention that a translator is doing and the body of purpose that work is intended to deliver are enhanced with the kind of tools that you built. So I'll try to explain a little bit more precisely there, but you mentioned that Ben was talking about the translator not going away. But BureauWorks, what you built was a way of making the translator's time more valuable by helping them to get the context, look for context mistakes, kind of this looks like it may be an error, let's check it out, which improves the output quality and improves the speed at which the translator can deliver value. But I think one of the challenges that I think has often been a struggle in this industry is context, and it's not just about the context of the string or the whatever they're editing or whatever manipulation that we're paying them to do, and the immediate body, but there's also the related topics. So you think about applying AI in this case to enhance the productivity of an individual worker in arguably the most important worker in that journey, right? Is the translator. But we can also see a hint at new things to come, which is the searching additional context that would make that translator's time even more valuable, to the point where they can sort of machine translate something. They can cross-reference quickly by summarizing, asking for summarizations of different areas of domains that they may not have an intense experience with. And I think a lot of translators I've spoken to over the years have commented on the fact that they have to learn about the subject matter that they're translating. They are a professional in the translation process, but they have to get information about that topic, whatever it is, whether it's translating security software or translating user guides for complex equipment and whatever it is. I mean, we can medical. I mean, they're all very, very different. So you've hinted at a way that we can make that translator's time even more valuable by bringing more context to them, more information summarizing what's going on in the world, and really make sure that what their brains are loaded with as they're sitting down to do their job is the best possible preparation. It has the best possible preparation that is available. Now, I'm going to kind of go off on a separate topic here too that I've been thinking a lot about, which, speaking of that context, which is the industry is changing for sure, and I think it is threatening kind of the large scale, massive content to target types of enterprise projects, and that cuts down top line revenue, especially for companies that handle large projects like that. And I think we're going to see more on demand type of things, where there's more of a pull model. You look at how users are engaging with content, and then there's an interaction between them and that content. You can imagine building LLMs that are subject specific, and then end users would engage with that. And then you can monitor how they're engaging with that, and then develop content that will then go into that or enhance that in a way that will improve that user experience. I love the idea that there's a bidirectional conversation between somebody with a thing to sell and their customers globally. And how can you create that bidirectional, communication to happen? There's AI applications all over the place, from summarizing user behavior to improving customer experience, CX. And there's also things like looking at superpowering the end user through the use of AI as well. So I think BureauWorks is targeting one space in this right now. But I think that bridge between the people who have something that they're trying to sell to the global market and their end users has a lot of opportunity to go in two different directions. And that's a whole new area. That's a whole space that has very limited support right now, and has a ton of potential applications to it. So, again, this is a really exciting time. AI is a very powerful new tool in that arsenal. It's not free. It's not cheap. In fact, some of that document, sort of the processing and document summary, for example, the document level or summarizing it is some serious CPU time, or GPU time is even more expensive. That compute load is non-trivial. So I will also see, in cases like yours, you're targeting a narrow use where you can control the costs and the value proposition in that narrow space quite well. And then I think add new layers in the future. Gabriel, you nailed it I think you nailed it when you said it's not, AI is a bad term. It's kind of too sloppy. It's too nebulous, too gassy, but too stinky. It's like a really stinky term. But it's a cool. It's more better to think about inputs and outputs, and you've got a input and you've got a task, a station where a person is doing a thing, and they have inputs and they have outputs. And if you can improve the value of that most expensive, most valuable station in that process, namely the human that's doing something, then you're going to, you can't lose. Like that has to be one of the most important areas where technology can strengthen our technology, our industry, and the productivity of the key players in that workflow.
Ben, were you going to say something? I noticed you were thinking while Eric was.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Eric touched on was this move back to more contextualized experiences, right? And so we're all experiencing a lot more contextualization in all the experiences that we have, digital experiences. And it's really tough to go from that side-by-side view of a string and its target, which is completely non-contextualized, to feed these experiences that we're expecting to provide our users, right? So if you're a SaaS company and you guys have a lot of translation work and you send all of this out to the translators, and they're dealing with this grid that hides so much from that about what the intended experience was. And if we look at our Facebook feed or TikTok or whatever, we see more and more contextualization, and we know that this is where the world is going. So when I think back about what Trados did all those years ago was marvelous. It took that context out of the equation and gave us an easy way to access all of these lines of text. But that isn't righteous anymore. That's not what we are trying to deliver as a technology industry, right? The software companies that I consult with, that's not what they're going for. They want users to love them. They want to have stickiness. And if I gave them the Trados grid today, they go, what is that? And no shame or slight meant towards the people who make that type of software, especially not the Trados folks. Thank you guys. This was an awesome thing to do. Sorry, it's blurring out, but this is the original Trados CD, and I still have it. Right, it was the right thing to do in 1993, but
Wow.
It's not 1993 now. So how are we going to get back to providing the rich context to the translators while they're in that moment of doing the language work that we all rely on?
Yeah, and just tying both of the concepts that both of you are talking about, it's to me, I think the key word both of you were saying is context, and I think Eric also hinted at this word too, but to me, it's this idea of a dialogical experience at all levels. So it's not just, Rodrigo. We had a panel at LocWorld as well, and Rodrigo used a metaphor that I thought was really brilliant, which is we're coming from a more kind of like radio and TV age in translation, like where translators receive a certain form of information, whether it's a machine translation or a TM, but it's unidirectional, right? It's not, and the way we see AI, it's kind of like, oh, it makes it all of a sudden not just bidirectional but multi-directional. It's like it's also learning from what I'm doing. And I think, and then what Eric's saying as far as like extending that, not just within the translator experience, which is core, but also the user and the opportunity to bring those things together. And just to put the final seasoning there, I think finally we may have a way to really understand what translation quality means, not from a theoretical framework, but from a practical framework. Because ultimately, in my opinion at least, it's hard to define a text as good or bad. Obviously, it could be full of mistakes, but if it's engaging and people are there and they don't bounce off the page and they hit the like button and they buy the product, something's working. Even if it's like grotesquely put together, and you could have an impeccable text and everybody's like, nah, I'm bored, I'm out. And it's just now I think we have a way to finally at least begin to bridge that gap between what's linguistic quality and what's linguistic outcome, and ultimately find a place where they live closer to each other. But I don't know if there's anything you'd like to speak to that.
No, I think that's really interesting. I mean, people aren't just, think about the box that we put them in when you create content. So your mind of the creator of this content has a purpose that they're intending to impart. That purpose may be in the context of their native culture. It may be used very differently in the target application, and the way that those end customers experience things or want to experience things, it could be different levels of formality. It could be different amplitudes. I remember one of my former colleagues had made a conversation. She was hypothesizing about sort of a Western versus an East Asian way of thinking about things. And the Western approach is a little bit more like, you're doing it wrong. Like you're doing your coffee wrong. Here's 10 mistakes you're making with your coffee. Whereas I think in East Asia, doesn't really fly very well. Like pointing a finger at the reader and saying you're flawed is really an inappropriate messaging strategy. Instead, you could be talking about here's 10 ways you can make your coffee more harmonious, or even better yet, switch to a beverage that's a little bit more appropriate, and then find 10 positive things that are appropriate there. So you have a transcreation dimension that's possible now that is much more accessible than it's ever been before. And then you can even see how people are engaging with that content more effectively as well. And they can provide meaningful feedback that then gets converted back into the intent of the designers again. So they're now looking at this in a different through a different lens. So I mean, we're talking very philosophically about a broad range of different applications of AI, or models that can convert things from one to another. I think there's a ton of potential there, and I'm very excited about it. Ben, I'm rambling again. What are your thoughts?
So I think that once we can really move forward with what I think of as more of an advanced GAN, an LLM is just a machine that spits outwards. But that idea of a set of machines arguing with each other to come up with a better outcome, right? And then putting a human in that mix. One of the things I think we're lacking then is a cultural awareness engine that knows things about an Eastern Asian approach, like Eric referenced, versus an American approach. And I know that probably most of us have fun stories about marketing coming to us with, this is what we're doing in the United States, and I expect you to translate it and release it to everyone. And going, but that's illegal, that's unethical, that's not going to fly, right? For one reason or another, your message is American centric or German centric or not global. And my team's job isn't just to translate it, it's to solve that problem along the way. but none of the intelligence that I've seen deployed are really capable of understanding or implementing this cultural nuance, right? It's something that we need, and the translators do, the linguists do, the writers are writing about it in their way, and it's required as part of transcreation. So is there an opportunity from an AI perspective to deploy that? I think the answer is yes, but where is that going to be done? Who's going to do that? That I think is going to be a really exciting achievement that we should see shortly in our industry.
As well as
Hi guys, I'm good. Sorry to stop you. I'm going to pass the microphone to my friend Rodrigo, colleague, because I need to leave the call. It's been a pleasure. I hope everyone's enjoying the chat. Good to see you all. See you very soon.
Take care, Javi.
So yeah, just to finish our thing, what Gabriel mentioned earlier was who gets to decide what quality is, like what is the bar that quality is. Ultimately, that's a human-centric concept that I think there's a lot of potential to explore with these technologies. How can we help a person to understand what quality is for a particular use case, and how to best enhance that over time? So we're talking about these different layers of how algorithms can help improve these models can help improve the customer experience. I mean, in what BureauWorks Pick Innovation Challenge, the win there is about applying it to look for something that's a little off to improve quality, right? It's a quality enhancement tool, so you have fewer errors, fewer mistakes. Again, in the context of trying to adapt to a particular target message that comes from the beginning. But there's also the potential for the translator's ability to summarize, or the person doing this task, to get new information to them, to help them make better choices about what interventions they're doing to improve it. That context helps them understand what the quality expectations for a particular target would be better, right? So they're getting inputs potentially from, like, okay, we're going to such and such a target language, the cultural norms are this, we're going to adapt the message in these ways. And I have all these new tools in my toolbox as I'm sitting there doing this task to help get that message across more effectively than in the past, where I would have had to learn all this stuff up front, or maybe try to spend a lot of unpaid hours educating oneself about what this industry's expectations are. That could be much faster with these kinds of tools.
And both of you are touching on that. It's super refreshing for me to hear both of you speak, because, like you defined it, AI is a sloppy, stinky term. I agree. And not only that, but because you're super contextualized in the specific challenges of our industry, you can also have a very clear articulation of the opportunities as well. But my question to both of you is, what about everybody who I see, who either within the industry or without, that is reducing AI to either something good or something bad, or something that needs to, like, I see this a lot with executives, like, sometimes just, I don't know the complexity of translations. Why are we bothering spending $1 million a year in translations? Like, just process everything through an LLM. What, in your opinion, can be done as far as improving the overall awareness of what these things are and how they can be used, if anything?
I mean, one big thing I'd say is there's the hype cycle is in full swing right now with regards to Gen AI. So we're clearly being deluged by absurdities, of both bad and good, right? So there's horror stories about how this is the end of civilization and people are going to be out of the loop and mass unemployment and blah blah blah. I don't see that there's much merit to that. But also the folks who are saying this isn't going anywhere, this is not that different than things are today, both of those are very wrong statements. I think the truth is that the winners, and again, ignoring the 90% of all the opinions out there that are largely poorly informed, the real value gets created when you start applying something and measuring it, right? So think an iterative experimental approach right now is going to lead to faster, more resilient results. And again, you can't do that with everything all at once. You just need to narrow down on a few problem spaces and see whether or not you can apply these ideas and make them work. And the end result's going to be the sum of three different things, I think. One is the enhancement of known processes, like what BureauWorks is focused on right now, like the innovation challenge. Not more broadly speaking about what BureauWorks can do, but just specifically what you won with the innovation challenge is making a known process more effective. There's a second, which is the types of workflows that are henceforth unknown or haven't really been explored yet. I think this is a space where we see things in a weird order, like we see Gen AI being done to create something first, and then we have a human kind of modifying that and sculpting it and creating something new out of it. And there's some interesting companies that are addressing that. But I think the third is fundamental rethinking of where the value chain is, where value is being created. So I think those who can use tools to create value more effectively, and I'm going to define value as fit for use and not having some kind of commercial value to deliver something that's fit for use, are by far going to be the winners in this new space. So the only problem that you're going to run into is if you you build an algorithm, you trust it too much. And I think you see this happening with the stock market all the time, where people think that they've got their secret algorithm that's going to guarantee that they're going to get rich. And then this black swan event happens, and all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore because all their algorithms have been like modeled after behaviors in the last 10 years. And those guys lose a ton of money. Like they go bankrupt, they get destroyed by not seeing that there's a fundamental shift in the landscape. And those black swan events just complete. And those who are not familiar with black swan events, it's a concept that they believe that there was no such thing as a black swan because nobody had ever seen it before. That's not justification for why it's not going to happen. Like they exist, they just hadn't seen them yet. So black swan event is this model that fundamentally shifts. I think fundamentally we're at a black swan event, and the companies and the people who can recognize that the rules are changed are going to be able to adapt and do innovative things in the future. And some people will lose a ton of money. I'm not that's true. And some people will find that their skills are no longer needed. But I think on the other end of the spectrum is a potential for huge opportunity for the companies and individuals as employees or as employers and as providers, and the clients are just seeking to deliver value from those suppliers are going to make a ton of money. I mean, I think that it's the vision of seeing what's possible with this that sets the future tone. I am also going to make this really clear too, that the Gen AI stuff is just beginning, and it's so far pretty much US centric. I mean, the English centric. There's a few high resource languages that are kind of starting to get better supported, but I think that's not thinking about it the right way. Like thinking about it as a replacement of the translation process is missing the big picture, which is that third category, the second and third categories that I mentioned. Those things are where that's where the excitement's going to happen, is when you stop thinking about making a better horse and you want to think about rethinking the entire problem space from the ground up, and then building the tool set that's going to deliver value for that problem space. That's what I get jazzed about. That's what I get really excited about. This is breaking it down and thinking these pieces now can be assembled in new ways. How can we deliver even better value to the world? And what are the barriers of entry for getting all the rest of the languages, all the other participants in the global economy to participate in the digital global economy? All right, so I'm ending on a really big vision. I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Ben?
But I think we don't know what we don't know. The thing that we see now isn't what we will have done with it in a couple of years, right? So I know we've been using Siri and Alexa and these other AI products for quite a while. They're normal, non-scary things, and they were generating content for us this whole time. And people just started to take them for granted. The people who invented the internet wanted research scientists to have a better opportunity to collaborate. They didn't envision that that's how I'm running my greenhouse, right? Alexa was a $30 platform that I could deploy for a voice interface when my hands were full of soil to turn on the watering system for me. And it's a great workflow engine for $30, right? It's not what Amazon thought that they were building that for, but we don't know what we're going to see out of this new excitement around AI as an industry that was very small before. There's now a ton of eyeballs on this from a huge spectrum of people versus GPT. The T is transformer. It's a couple of Google research scientists in machine translation. And that idea was explosive. And what they were thinking about was a better MT outcome, not what we see now with generative AI across the board. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here that we aren't looking at, we aren't seeing. Other people will see this because there is so much attention on this now by such a huge segment of the population that we're going to see all sorts of crazy stuff. I hope we see more crazy stuff from you guys too.
I think you will. We're working on it. But just to really try to put my finger on what I think is a sore spot, which is, you touched on it, Ben, and I think Eric as well. So there are a lot of people that are like there's a comet in the sky and are not looking just what we can do right now to make something better or more productive. And maybe I'm just wrong, but I feel when I talk to most people, it feels like most people have a very strong opinion about what GPT is, what it's not, what privacy is, what it's not. Rarely do I talk to people who don't have a very strong opinion. If I have the opportunity to get into deeper kind of conversation, I realize that those opinions are coming from basically reading a few headlines here and there, skimming through a few articles here and there, a few posts here and there. Very few people I talk to actually have opinions that are based on experiential use, applications, things like that. And I see that both on the user side and on the decision maker side. So, ultimately what I see is a lot of just, it's anecdotal, but I see, let's say, someone at a high executive level saying, hey, why are we translating things in the first place? Let's just process it through a large language model, something that gets asked often to localization managers and directors, and also translators saying, I've actually gotten responses like this. I find it shameful that translators are using this. I find it, disgusting. I've seen like wording like that. So there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation that's like particular of our age, but it impacts directly our ability to do things with this. So I guess I really struggle with this idea of how do you, because when we're dialoguing with like other people who are quote unquote experts, it's a fairly same page dialogue, right? We're talking about context. We're all, like the four of us, we're working with a very similar level of context as far as, okay, we've been in the industry for maybe a few decades. We've hit our heads around a few different problems. We know that it's not a simple thing, far from it. So it's fairly easy for us to arrive at a certain level of understanding. But when you talk to people who are coming at it from a completely different angle, is there anything we can do to better communicate what these challenges are, how to work at them better? Is there some level of education that can be done? And yeah, I'd love to learn from your experience, like trying to, bridge that gap between people who don't know what they're talking about and people who do know what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, one really important point is, as we are in this industry, it's really easy for us to assume that what we do adds value. I think we should question how we're adding value. because some of those executives might be right. Like they might be like, MT is okay for the use case that we're applying it to, and that how do we make that MT or that other automated solution more effective? There's really no reason not to do it in that case, especially considering that budgets are finite. They don't, humans are expensive. What is the best use of a human in this process? So my gut reaction is, let's first try to make sure we understand why an outcome would be problematic, like a wrong outcome. And shameful, unfortunately, is not a very commercially viable word. Like I think it needs to be a little bit more articulated than that. In the language of business, that would be translated into brand damage or mistakes or some consequences, some negative consequences. And I think if we are focusing our human efforts at the areas in which the consequences of failure are the highest, then I think we're going to be focusing on the right things. I just don't think it's worth trying to argue that for a technical documentation for, this has been machine translated already for a long time, like knowledge base articles where we don't know who's going to even be looking at this stuff or how much time they're going to spend on it, or e-commerce, a lot of e-commerce stuff. Okay, so you get enough information to make a buying decision. It doesn't have to be beautiful language. It's not tempting to do that. And the consequences of making the language process expensive in that case make the platform less competitive or the products less competitive. So, you think about these use cases very, very focused, and that's getting back to the process innovation challenge, like the forcing one to get down to that, really understanding what the value is being created in a very sharp and succinct kind of way. Unlike the way I communicate, by the way, I ramble all the time, but just spending time to really focus on what is the value. And if you can't show that a human is adding value in that loop, they shouldn't be there. Let's move on to other things. Instead, let's not think about how to force people or to encourage people to retain sort of an inefficient process, but you can look at okay, you think MT is better, let's look at it, let's test it, and let's find out how we can improve it, or how can we do something about it if it's now causing problems. Like, what is the best ways of fixing those problems, or when is the right time to use people? I think overall, we as an industry, whether we like it or not, are going to have to we will be incented by the way that business works to focus on the highest value activities. And I think that's that's the answer to your question, is if you can do it automatically, don't try to do it by person, by human. But instead, let's think about how we can innovate to use those humans in a richer and more valuable kind of way, in ways that they can't be automated. And I think that getting back to kind of the key innovation of like context is king, and like the wisdom of a human who understands what the purpose of this content is, empowering them to be able to do things is hugely relevant. That's super, super relevant. Anyway, not to completely 180 you on exactly what I just said, but there are a lot of still.
No, but I loved it, and I think that you one point I do want to stress that was a little bit implicit in what you said, but I think that I heard that this is what I understood, that maybe the step number one is listening, and I think that's part of the problem of our communication, right? It's very one-sided, and if you take the time to really listen to whatever either concerns or opportunities are being presented, then you have the chance to articulate something that's more like, I hear a lot of what you're saying as far as getting back with things that are value driven and not coming from an area of prejudice or like this is how it's always been, and really like questioning like what is the most value for this kind of situation. And I think that's really cool, and I noticed that that's typically like I'm able to do that in small groups, one-on-ones. I think I think we can promote this kind of like listening scenario where I can like start a conversation with, just for instance, a translator who's super resistant and hesitant, and end up being like, yeah, I'm signing up and I'm trying this out and I'm actually enjoying it. Same thing with same example that you shared. Maybe, it's a business decision, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense for me to really spend $50,000 on this translation. I'll just do some AI post editing with you guys, and it's going to cost me 5,000. That makes sense, and it's going to get me even better results than anything else. But I think I do wonder about what about this mass kind of situation that most of us, at least I spend quite a bit of time on LinkedIn, for instance, trying to communicate with people, and I noticed that it's hard to get to that level that you're suggesting, which is, actually listening and talking about added value and where the real value is and rethinking things. I don't know, Ben, anything that you'd like to add in that direction?
I think that there's a lot of echo chambers on LinkedIn. There's some different groups that I am in that have very different viewpoints on exactly the same topics. And I spend a lot of time with executives talking about what is the value of this stuff and how would we use it in their situation, right? And so they often do think, well, I'm just going to run all this through an LLM and I don't have anything else to do. Or I can make my American English into UK English by asking ChatGPT to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, cool. Would you say that I should use ChatGPT to replace the CEO job at your company? Right? I can train an LLM on the output of many thought leaders in CEO roles and just put that on a conference call bot, right? And do I need a CEO at that point? And that makes them think
Yeah, Rodrigo has been suggesting that to me. He wants to replace me with an LLM.
Yeah. I mean, I'm making a chat bot of myself, which is weird. But it's going to help me do things more consistently, right? I've got a lot of things that I could teach it to do that would help me. And then I can put it on my website and you can come and ask Ben questions. But I need to make sure that when it doesn't know, it doesn't make up some nonsense. I need to make sure that it's not going to tell people things that are illegal or unethical, immoral, right? And so that's where we see a need for other things to be involved. So it'll call me, right? It'll reach out and say, hey, get on Slack in this channel because you need to take some action here. And so the same thing could happen with support. The same thing could happen if I go to FedEx.com, they've got a chatbot on their homepage and I can go, hey, where's my package? And what's your tracking number, Ben? Here it is. But if you ask it in French, it says, I don't speak French, right? And it's like, guys, come on, you're FedEx. You know most of your customers are not in the United States, and you could do this easily for the rest of your customers. I wish they would. And if they needed help, I would be happy to do that, right? Building multilingual LLMs is not rocket science anymore. That became easy in about April. So these things are valuable. And the value then to FedEx is all of these people will know where their package is regardless of what their native language is. Your costs are going to go down because they're not calling you on the phone. They're not tying down a support agent. Your brand value goes up because people all over think you're a better company and not just Americans getting to get this type of service. So I try to play it both ways, right? What do you think about the AI just replacing you? Oh, well, that's not possible. Okay, then why do you think that about your translator versus what else could you be doing with this stuff that would make your value as a person, your value as an organization go up right away without months or years of effort?
Yeah, that's a key concept, right? I think that people easily fall into the trap of something as a replacement for something else. When you look at the enhancement scenario, it's a little bit harder to grasp. It's a little bit harder to understand, even to articulate. It's like you said, for instance, it's one thing for an LLM to replace the CEO. It's the other thing for the CEO to be enhanced by the LLM, maybe saying less stupid things less often, something like that. And that's a possible scenario. But we tend to go to the full tend to be very extreme. It's like either not using it or using it to replace. And I wonder myself all the time, like you said about these echo chambers, like, is there a world where these echo chambers, at least in localization, I'm not talking about like obviously the broader community has its own challenges, but in localization, is there a world where we can get these echo chambers to talk to each other, or is it just that's just the way it is?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think the echo chamber is. I mean, you look at the incentives that people have to to put something out there, and sometimes they're trying to generate like demand, or they're trying to. They usually, when people are sharing things, they have a message that they're trying to get across. So acknowledging that the system or the communication that we have going on out there is the way there's a reason for it. It's not arbitrary. Echo chambers exist because people are amplifying certain kinds of core objectives that they're trying to make through their own marketing of their own brand or their own company or whatever they're doing. They're trying to amplify something. So let's park that for a second, recognizing that it doesn't matter what that is. Like, a lot of those sort of voices aren't really saying more than pay attention to me. But okay, so let's talk about the parts that are going to change. Changes are made when people make buying decisions. They are really changed. The real market is changing when they accept jobs, or whether they accept bids as a company, and they decide to create that value for a client. Like, that's where the real progress happens, and I think that's where it's so important. The second thing I'd also say, though, too, in playing around with these tools myself, is there are some things I'm really good at, but usually this is sort of a negative statement, but I'm really not if you aren't starting off with what it can get you, you're missing an opportunity to save yourself some time. But a lot of that stuff could be found from other sources relatively quickly anyway. I mean, it's basically not secret stuff. I think one of the most impressed I was asking about the U.S. Political system. I asked it, like, what are the differences between Democrats and Republicans, and what kind of, if you wanted to kind of bring them together, what policies would likely resonate with both groups together. It came up with a fantastic response. Like, solving our political problems very often isn't actually a problem that is complicated. It's just that people are so entrenched with their own ambitions or their own reasons for wanting to differentiate the parties that it becomes a problem. So you recognize it's not actually the idea itself that's the hard part. It's the motives that are not aligned. There's a reason why things are the way they are. So the other sort of thing is it only knows what it knows, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. And how do we know what to do with that information? How do we know when to trust it, and how do we know when not to trust it? And another sort of anti-message here is that it's only good for people who know what correct looks like. Like, you can get it to do something. You're like, yeah, okay, that helped me solve this puzzle faster, but I still needed to decide whether or not this was an appropriate answer or not, which might be, again, where the translator ends up being at the epicenter of this too, is because they may be, in many ways, the best judge of what correct is. You need somebody who understands two cultures. You need somebody who understands the whole picture to be able to know whether or not it's the right answer or not. If you delegate over to a algorithm without that expertise, then you run the risks of whatever it's going to come up with without that supervision or without that wisdom that kind of comes with that. So again, it's sort of like, it's useful, but it's not. It's powerful if you know what to look for, but if you don't know what it is, you have no way of knowing whether it's right or wrong. So if you follow it, you do so at your own peril. So again, getting those experts empowered with the right signals and the right support seems even more important than ever.
Those are very cool words, and for me, it's been a pleasure learning from you, Eric, from you, Ben, as well. I think it's I really wanted to take advantage of the opportunity and have this conversation, because it's a treat, and I think hopefully our audience enjoyed as well. And just, if anybody in our audience, Eric and Ben, want to reach out to you to tap into your wisdom and understand more about what you do, what's the best way to reach you? What's the best way to find you?
My part, ping me on LinkedIn message. I'll be sure to give you a response.
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Or come to my website. It's bencornelius.com. I'm pretty ubiquitous on the web. So.
Very cool. And I have a lot to think about. There's a lot of great topics and ideas that are going through my mind based on everything great that you've shared today. And again, really want to thank you for the kindness and in being available and for talking to us. It's like I said, it's always a treat. And I don't know, Rodrigo, if you have any finishing remarks, or you, Ben, Eric, anybody, feel free to chime in.
I'll just say congratulations again for winning the Process Innovation Challenge. It wasn't up to me and Ben and Alessandra alone. The audience played a really important role. So it wasn't just the two of us who put the crown on your head on this one. But congratulations for that. And also I want to say it was not an easy, I mean, the field had a lot of strong candidates. There's a lot of great ideas out there. So if you haven't watched the entire video of all the other ideas, I encourage you to do so because there's some great ideas out there. But that's also to say, even more so, congratulations, even amongst these many great ideas.
Yeah,
this was a great victory. So congratulations again for that.
Thank you. No, I take those words to heart. It's our team. Most importantly, I was super happy about how our team was happy. They work so much, and I think for us, it's super. It's challenging to build a culture that really rewards innovation, because innovation often takes time, is risky, doesn't pan out as expected, and most corporate culture is about the opposite, right? It's about predictability, it's about results, it's about short-term thinking. So it's the thing that makes us the proudest is that I think that we're nurturing well a culture that focuses on innovation beyond just whatever's coming up this quarter. So but I really thank both of you for your words, and I agree, it was really hard. It was really hard, but we're very proud and stimulated to continue going forward.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah. Likewise.
Rodrigo, any finishing remarks?
No, it's just I would like to say thank you again to Eric and Ben. They were always prompt, answering and replying and accepting our date time modifications all the time. It was great. I'd love to schedule more opportunities to talk more about specific, because you guys opened many verticals in our event today. I think you will have a lot of new content we can discuss about, like how we can create vertical LLMs and quality assurance. You said, Eric. Yeah, thank you, and I hope we can do again this kind of event soon.
Awesome. Me too.
Thank you very much.
All right, great being with everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.